Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us with Hands-On Analytics. This is number 4, and today we're talking about sales tax. That thing that we all love to stay up late at night and dream about and think about in our free time. We were having a conversation with a client a few weeks ago about how they could potentially use Alteryx for sales tax work, and what resulted from that conversation was this workflow that we built to kind of demonstrate how Alteryx does a good job at managing like the process of um, of working with things like sales tax. And in this example, we talk about like state, county, city. Like how do we know what our tax burden is? If that's something that's not already like just like separated in our POS or our source of truth. So I would I got back on to record this with my business partner Eric, who comes from this world, who really likes this, and really that's where he kind of cut his teeth in Alteryx and helping automate these sorts of processes. So today we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're very excited that you're here with us. If you make it all the way through the end of the video, there's some contact information. If you enjoy this and you want to know more about how your organization can be helped in these ways, we'd love to talk to you. Also, if you do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button, it helps us get this message out to more people. And yeah, so without any further ado, Hands-On Analytics number 4, Sales Tax with Erik DeMar. Well, a few weeks ago, we were approached by that group who wanted to do, who was just asking us about some tax things. And you had mentioned before that you had done a lot of tax work, or state, local, city sales tax work with one of the previous organizations you worked with. And that kind of brought up this whole thing where we want to build a workflow. And essentially, this is what we came to. So, can you talk us through a little bit about the problem that organizations have with doing like sales tax analysis, or I guess what's the problem?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in an organization where you have high transaction volumes across multiple tax jurisdictions, the process to come up with those sales tax liability amounts can be very complicated. The good news is that it's a cyclical function with set logic, and processes like that are perfect for Alteryx. And so in a previous organization, I was able to cut down the sales tax analysis process by, about a tenth of the time it took. The only part of the process, now going forward, now that the process is in Alteryx, is extracting sales reports out of the POS system.
And
And
then of course whatever your tax rate data sources and stuff like.
no, because your tax rates are usually pretty stagnant. They don't fluctuate. Maybe once every few years. So it's not like you're having to update once you put in sales tax rates into your workflow. You don't really have to touch them either for potentially years. It's those sales tax reports you have to download, land into a shared folder, come into the workflow, hit the run button, you're done. Or if you're more sophisticated, you could just connect Alteryx directly to your POS system, and then all you have to do is come into the Alteryx workflow and change the month that you want to run the report on and press run. All your journal entries are created, and then any other types of reports that you need to submit to the state are also created.
You mentioned a POS system. I know that like if I go and I pay for something as a consumer, I see like tax broken out on its own line item. How is within the POS system, would that normally exist too? And why is that dollar amount not good enough for every transaction? Does that make sense what I'm asking there?
Yeah. Well, oftentimes it might be,
Yeah.
but as accountants, we like to tick and tie, and we like to reconcile, and we like to fact check the POS system, what it has versus what the state would audit with. And so You certainly don't have to build all that logic into your workflow. You can just pull the amount directly from the POS system and then create the journal entry. But it doesn't, it's simple algebra. So adding that step to the workflows, and a reconciliation inside of the workflows, something that I would recommend doing.
Gotcha. And then something I just thought about now too is as we built this workflow out, it's not just necessarily like a state tax rate, but you've also got county and city tax, and then you have other specific taxes for like sometimes there's lodging taxes and things like that. So if the whole line item is just like sales tax, but not understanding what percent of each of those go to the city, to the county, and the state, it probably doesn't. Probably pulling that one tax line item doesn't solve your problem either on that. So yeah, so let's talk about this workflow. Let's talk about how I built it and how we can approach things. I very much love building workflows kind of within a dynamic, so that like as things change, I don't have to think about the changes in every single iteration. Like it kind of handles those changes for you. So earlier, like we had mentioned, like if rates change, I use the example of the state of Oklahoma, and what I did was I created a data set for these rates. And here's a good example where like something in the tax code for Canton in Blaine County changed going into July of 2024. So essentially what we did was we created a record. So there's like a historical record where this was the tax rate. And then if we go through here, I'm not going to sort through here, but there should be a second record for this city, county, state, and then one of these three different, probably one of these two tax rates are going to be different. So what this allows us to do is create like a historical record of between dates, what was the effective tax rate. Now, this is not dissimilar to like how we do other like database kind of like not fact records. So like how long was a record like active for, or something like that. So we're using similar tactics to put this together, and this isn't to talk about that workflow, but the idea here is that like we have done some legwork ahead of time to make sure that like there's some sort of data set that's going to be moving as tax rates change, and I don't have to worry about it in this workflow. I just have something else that manages that. We also took some fun fake retail data here where we just said, okay, within any city, city and county. Yeah, so essentially it's got that city, county, and then we know this is all in Oklahoma. Oh, sorry, I've got we know this is in Oklahoma, so we know this applies. Probably there'd be another state field here, but again, just for this example, so we have like a sales date and then product category, which is going to be important later because of the way certain tax laws in Oklahoma are we'll talk about affect this, and then quantity, and then like unit price and total sales. So like we have all of the things that we need in order to calculate this. One of the things that you mentioned to me, I'm not an accountant by nature, so understanding how to do things is what you had mentioned to me was that like the sales date. So we have I think of a sales date, so any day a transaction happens, but when we think about general ledgers or journal entries, we have to think about for like some period, like for end of month for this example. So what we did is we converted everything to like the last day of the month. And then what we're doing is we're taking a single record and we're going to join it to this tax table, so that for like, again, for a city, county, and any particular sales date, I'm sorry, for because everything exists in here, we're essentially doing some silly joins that Alteryx doesn't normally handle really well. But there's ways to do this, like a joining in SQL. You can do what's called like a join to a range. So like where a value is join a record where a value is between two values, and that's specifically really important for dates. But Alteryx doesn't have that, so we do like this process to kind of like, okay, we'll join everything, but then we only really want things in that range. So that's what we're doing here. But ultimately, we're bringing all this information here. So what is the effective tax rates on these records? We started with 1,000 records. We end with 1,000 records. Now, this is where we talk a little bit about this red box here. And one of the things that's really cool about Alteryx is that allows you to make adjustments for instances like this. So in Oklahoma, effective August 1st, Oklahoma removed sales tax from food items, statewide sales tax from that. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't county and city sales tax still, but state tax for food item is gone. So we essentially we talked about this category that we had. So we broke it down into like food and non-food items. There's a list of this. We would probably, if this was a more robust data set, we probably would already have some sort of categorization in there. So this is to help us this was just to help us like fix that in our data set. Anyway, so we brought this in saying that, okay, what is the category of these items, and then this effective date, which is going to be important later. This sales data set is after that, but like I don't know why we would, but there might be an opportunity where we need to go back and look at like, oh, we need to check on some transactions we did in June or in March or in April, and we wanted to run it through the same process. This would effectively assure that like these changes apply before to anything after that date, and everything before that date holds with the sales tax rate at that time. And then we do things like corporate codes. So we've talked about things that you commonly see in accounting functions and general ledgers and stuff. And so again, we don't have it in our data set, so we created some fun store ID company codes so that we can do a breakdown of this. We join all of our data back together. What's cool about this that you don't see in things like Excel or SQL is that at every single one of these points, we understand how many records are coming through. So if records are dropping off or we have more records because of like a Cartesian join or something like that, we're understanding at every step how many records we have. Where in like Excel, if you're doing a VLOOKUP, you have to go through and find your NAs. It's like, okay, why wasn't that in there? Or if let's say there was a value on your table that you were expecting, but it wasn't in your data, you have to like do a reverse VLOOKUP to see like what was it in our data set. So Alteryx just does a really good job at like pointing out what data is and is not in your data set. Then we do a quick clean. So again, one of the really fun things about Alteryx is it has this tool called autofield. So anyone who's ever used Excel understands the frustrations of like, okay, you get a CSV and then you get all these fields and then you have to change data types to do math on certain things because they come through as strings. And Alteryx does a really good job. It just goes through all the fields. It's okay, we assume that these are these because of what we see in the data. So I don't have to go and manually change data types and stuff like that. It covers that for me. And then we start doing our calculations. So this is the formula tool. We do our county tax, so that's whatever total sales is times our county rate. City, same thing. State, this is where we talk about that effective date, where we do an if statement. So we're saying if the category is food and the sales date is after that effective date, then that sales tax rate is 0. Otherwise, do this total sales times state tax. So again, this gives this a little bit more of a dynamic formula for that. And then we'd have like a total tax dollar, which I can't remember if we actually use this, but the idea or why I show you this is that we can do formulas in this one tool where we are doing it all in one step instead of having like a bunch of different steps all lined out. We're referring to fields that we've created in the same tool. Then we're doing some pivoting. So like we want our data to eventually look like something we can push to a general ledger. So we're doing some summarization of like sales date, company code, and then what type of tax, we're pivoting it, then we're summarizing it. So we had 1,000 records, and then we had one record for every different type of tax through this tool. And now it's like, okay, some based on sales date, company code, and tax type, and then give us what that total value is in here. So again, like this is now moving into pivot table functions, which finance, accounting, anyone who uses Excel should be is likely using pivot tables. And so this is Alteryx does a really good job at kind of replacing some of those functions within itself. So Then what we do is we have these account numbers again. So I had this state, county, city tax, and that's not exactly something that we'd put into our general ledger. We needed to understand what account numbers. So we added some fake account numbers to this data set, and now we have like those accounts. Then what we do is just some like formatting for our general ledger. So we do some rounding. Again, some other this can be as strict or as lenient as you want. Again, we think this is a fairly good examples because we're rounding to the nearest cent. And then I'm going to show you this process here. What's really cool about Alteryx is that you can take data in two different directions, so you're not necessarily stuck on a single like line of data. If I wanted to grab data from here and bring it to the end, I could. There's no reason why we're like stuck in any sort of formatting. So anyway, so I'm going to do two things here. The first thing we're doing is we're getting rid of our credits. So essentially this is our debit line and this is going to be our credit line. So this gets rid of our debits. This gets rid of this gets rid of our credits. This is just something on the credit value. And then we have some of these zeros here. And if we want to go look back into the data, like if this is a problem or something you wouldn't expect, what we could do is add a tool like the test tool here saying that like, okay, we want credit values that are greater than 0, but if there are values less than 0, it's probably pretty important that we know that. So we could add a test tool. We talk about the test tool a little bit later, so we won't dive further into that. But again, Alteryx does a really good job at like allowing us to like, yes, it can be dynamic, but if it's too dynamic and things happen that we wouldn't normally expect, we need something to like to call that out. And so we union the data back together. So now this is very much like here is our debit column, here's our credit column, account numbers, dates, company codes, and then we do a little bit of cleaning because we don't want nulls in there. We want to make sure it's a 0 value. And then we do a little bit of data validation because we want our credits and debits to equal the same. We just summarize all this back. And then essentially we say, hey, we need to know when these are different. They shouldn't be because this whole process kind of builds, then splits, and then comes back together. But is there any reason that they would be different? If so, this is that test tool I was talking about. We created a rule saying that like if there are any records coming out of this, meaning that the debit and the credit are different, we need to know. And so, yeah, so this is again just doing like our whole process of the testing, of the data validation, of the data processing, of essentially the whole thing that we could eventually either push straight to a general ledger with the output tools, or in this example, we could put it to a CSV or whatever. However, whatever your process looks like. Let me ask you this: when you were doing these sorts of things, did you push straight to a general ledger, or did you export to like a CSV so you could get like one look at it and then go, or like what was the process there?
Export to Excel file with a that was perfectly formatted for the journal entry upload, and then I would upload a journal entry to the ERP system. That's the most common approach.
Yeah.
In
Is that now,
automating journal entries.
for that ERP? Was that a limitation of the ERP that you couldn't like directly push something to like an API endpoint, or is that like a because I'm just trying to think for like auditing perspective here, right? Like if I was an auditor and we ran this for July and you want to go back and look at July, like there's something that like, don't we have to have the process saved or logged or whatever so that we could show like this is exactly what we did, here are the logs, how does like and I don't recall if that organization you were at was publicly traded, so it even matters. But would there be a benefit to like building things to write directly to a database in that sort of instance, or like?
Yeah, the benefit would be enhanced automation. It would remove the step of having to manually upload the journal entry. And I think that's something that, a lot of organizations can work towards. But you can achieve immediate, massive amounts of time savings by completing this process and still uploading the journal entry manually.
Got it. Cool. So let's talk about this workflow and let's talk about the work you've done. Like, how far off is this from stuff you've done? Like, what are we not thinking about in this example? And how is like Alteryx? Can you talk a little bit more about your work that you've done in the past?
This process that you've built here in Alteryx is pretty much exactly the same process that a lot of organizations deal with. I think you did a great job of factoring in everything into this journal entry.
Cool. Okay.
Um,
So
yeah, if we're talking about, sales tax related. Now, Alteryx is used in the entire field of, month-end close processes. So it's this, this discussion is just about sales tax, but anytime you're using Excel for more than 10 minutes in an accounting process, you really should be using Alteryx.
do you have like a list, like a short list of things that like other financial functions, month-end processes that that you've done in Alteryx?
Yeah, reconciliations, allocations, payroll benefits, journal entries, pretty much any journal entry you're using Excel. Every organization's different. But if you're listening out there, just think about what processes that you use Excel to create journal entries and reconciliations for, and know that you can automate those, because the logic is typically the same every month. It's largely the same logic that you want to apply, and so you can take that into your Alteryx workflow and automate the process.
Got it. Very cool. Let me ask you a real quick question, because we hear this about this platform a lot, which is Blackline. How does something like this, like let's say it's this process, and maybe this is a bad example because larger organizations, more complex organizations use Blackline. How would something like this work with Blackline? Is this a export it to Excel and then upload it, and then like how do those two platforms work
Yeah,
together? Why?
typically how Alteryx and Blackline work together is, as part of your reconciliation process in Blackline, you're uploading your support, and of what makes up the reconciliation, and so that part is automated with Alteryx. Most of the time, you'll upload some summary or some analysis that's been created to justify the balance that's recorded. And so that analysis is usually a repeatable process to tick and tie between two systems. Hence the reconciliation, you're reconciling from one system to another. And that analysis can be done in Alteryx, exported out of Alteryx and uploaded to Blackline.
Got it. So it's not necessarily that we would want to integrate this directly with Blackline. It's really something that where we are preparing things for the platform.
Yeah, I mean, my philosophy on automation is take it one step at a time, take it slow. 95% of the process in this case we're automating. If you want to automate the last 5%, yes, you can do things to integrate the two systems even better, but really the bulk of the automation comes in doing the work that you normally do in Excel and doing it in Alteryx.
Well, so actually, sorry, I want to expand on that question a little bit, because we do often hear this like Alteryx versus Blackline conversation, where people will be like, oh, we have Blackline, or we have, well, no one says we have Alteryx, so you need Blackline, but like we have Blackline, why do we need Alteryx? Again, I wouldn't even know how to approach the answer to that question. Other than my understanding is that there isn't really any data processing happening in Alteryx or any data preparation for journal entries.
Yeah, they're just different tools for different purposes. Blackline, the overarching reason why you'd use it is to better organize your month-end close process, and to have a purpose-built system for that. So your schedules are there. You upload supporting documents for your reconciliations there. They do have a few add-on tools that if you're really a power user, you could make the process of reconciling a little bit easier. But for most companies that are using Blackline, for most companies that are using the that want to adopt technology to enhance their month-end close you're using Alteryx to automate things you do in Excel, and you're you're using Blackline to stay more organized in your month-end close process for most organizations. For the power users out there, there might be a few things every now and then that you could really, if you're really maximizing every feature of Blackline, you may not need a workflow as well, but for the vast majority of companies, you're using both the tools because they're accomplishing both different things.
Yeah. So we've really kind of covered this like big kind of complex organization question around Blackline, but like, does this all still apply for like what size, like organization size is going to need this? Like, is there like, oh, we're too small, we're too big? Like how do people kind of approach these? Like, if I have my own company, and I'm like, oh, I need some help with accounting automation, and then I see something like Alteryx is like, okay, we're actually not complicated enough to need something like that. Like, who needs this?
Yeah, anybody that's using Excel needs this.
Okay, so
So
cool.
if you're a small organization and you're using Excel as part of your month-end close process, you could be saving money and time if you were to stop using Excel as heavily and use Alteryx. It really just comes down to the user. So if you've got one accountant at a company, you're more productive, you're more efficient, you're spending less time, you're saving money, you're adding value to the organization if you use Alteryx instead of using Excel.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter the size of the company. Any size company can benefit from adopting new technology. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that kind of covers everything I wanted to talk about here, especially around this. Love to put together another demo maybe around that reconciliation, which again, we do a little bit of reconciliation here, but we aren't actually going to two systems and reconciling. Maybe we can figure out what that will look like in the future. Any parting words on Alteryx, on accounting, on finance?
No, I mean, the parting words I have is that, as accountants, I think we can add a lot more value to the company than copying and pasting and dumping data out of spreadsheets and writing formulas and living in spreadsheet misery. There's a lot more value we can add to the organization in terms of actually, analyzing the business and making recommendations. And so by automating a lot of your processes with modern technology, it gives you time back in the day to do what you really want to do with your time, and that's to really try and impact the bottom line of your organization. I always tell people if you're using Excel for more than 10 minutes, and I'm not talking just processes that you do every cyclical things. I'm talking just anytime you use Excel for more than 10 minutes. I use it for ad hoc analysis. I use it for anytime I'm processing data, and it's something that you get good enough with the tool, which it doesn't take very long to do, and it really opens you up to a wide array of possibilities about how one person can really impact a company. Those are my parting words.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks, Eric. Excited to talk to you again about some of this stuff. And I guess we talk all the time about something. I'm excited to put together something else and chat about it. And we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Jason.
If you enjoyed that video, we'd just like to remind you to like and subscribe, and keep an eye out for new content because we are going to be doing a lot of this, and very excited to get the word out about analytics and just get people kind of excited and nerding out about it. So thank you for coming. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.